Hi, and welcome to The Scoop. My next guest is an intellectual and has been credited as the godfather of civil society here in Kenya. With a Bachelor's of Law degree from the University of Nairobi, a Master's from the University of Dar es Salaam, and a PhD from the University of York in Toronto, Canada, he was a law lecturer at the University of Nairobi from 1970 to 1980 and served as chair of the Law Society of Kenya and an executive director of the Kenya Human Rights Commission. He is the author of a number of widely published articles on the rights of detainees and the roles of NGOs and civil society. In 2011, he was made Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya. Honorable Chief Justice Dr. Willy Mutunga, welcome to The Scoop. Willy, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Law, and more law. When did you know that you wanted to become a lawyer?
1966, just next door, when I was a student at Strathmore. And I was convinced that the legal profession was a new profession for Africans. And a lot of us decided then and then to study law.
And so it wasn't something that you were pushed into by your folks? I mean, what was your background of your family?
My father was a tailor. He couldn't have pushed me to be a lawyer.
But tailor is, he could have...
Yeah, but I didn't have a family that would have pushed me to be a lawyer. But they pushed us to go to school.
So education was very important to them?
It was very, very important to our parents in the 50s, yes.
You were the first indigenous Kenyan to teach constitutional law at the University of Nairobi, 1970, I believe it was. Why did it take so long for Kenyans to get to that position of teaching?
I think there were quite a number of Kenyans who are teaching in other universities. Professor Yash Gai, who was my professor in Dar es Salaam, taught constitutional law in Dar es Salaam, but he couldn't get a job in Nairobi. So when I got to Nairobi, that's when I started teaching that particular course. But Nairobi had quite a number of expatriate lecturers. There were a few local ones, but they were teaching other courses and not that course.
Explain the journey. I mean, Nairobi, then Dar es Salaam, then Toronto, Canada. I mean, you pretty much can't get much further than that. What took you all the way to Toronto?
Well, I went there to do my doctorate. Some of my former professors taught in that university, and I got a scholarship, through them. But this is 1989. I did my master's in 74, so there was almost 15 years before I decided to do that.
It's very eventful 15 years between when you got your master's and when you went to York. There was only one time you wore the wig. The wig is a very ceremonial, symbolic thing for the legal profession. But you only ever wore it once.
Yes.
When, where, and why only once?
That was 19th of June, 1972, when I was admitted to the role of advocates. And I borrowed this from somebody, I can't remember who it was, but it was just for the ceremony. And I knew very well that I wouldn't wear it. Very uncomfortable, very itchy. And
so it wasn't a political statement. It wasn't something that you were saying that this is something that is a colonial hangover, and I'm not going to wear it on grounds of making a statement.
There was that bit, but the statement had been made by the Law Society itself by saying that wearing of wigs was optional. So I basically wore it on that day because the Chief Justice, James Wicks, wanted all of us to be wigged. So, and we went to Studio One, the famous photo studio, and we had our pictures taken, and that was it, yeah.
No, I'm fascinated with hair, having so little of my own. Any conversation that has hair in it takes me a long time to get over. 1982, Willy, is you were jailed.
Yes.
What did you do?
Um, I was detained without trial. This was because at the University of Nairobi, I was the Secretary General of the Staff Union. And the University of Nairobi was the only place where there was dissent in the country. Parliament had been dismantled. So that was the only place where we could challenge the policies of the Kanu dictatorship. And we got into trouble, you know, over that.
How did you challenge it? What were you just writing articles or demonstrating or protesting?
All those demonstrations, we wrote articles. It was mainly about academic freedom. Because what happened is that the government started basically removing certain books from the library because they were lefties or because they were progressive. And we had policemen in our classes, so there was a lot of intimidation. You couldn't read what you wanted, you couldn't write what you wanted. So it was around.
There were actually policemen in the classrooms.
Oh,
they used to come, what, in plain clothes or in uniform policemen?
No, plain clothes.
But you knew that they were policemen?
Yeah, because you know the classes were very small. If you have 15 students and you have two karaos come in, dress and so forth, you obviously they are not just
two different ones every time you had a
and
class.
it was intimidation because you couldn't get them out.
Right.
And it was a worrying time.
Was this 1982, August 1st was when the attempted coup happened in Kenya.
Yeah.
Were you detained before or after this event?
I was detained before.
Before?
Before. I was detained 3 days before.
So the paranoia would have increased even more after the coup of that regime.
It did actually increase, and a lot of the students in the university were jailed, others were killed during that period.
16 months you spent in detention.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. I mean,
well,
I've never, thankfully been detained before for more than a few hours. But 16 months in a high security, maximum security prison?
Prisons were segregated. The Asians went to their own block, the Europeans and the Africans. So as detainees, we were lucky. We stayed in a block reserved for Europeans in the colonial period. So we had showers and decent toilets, and we also had a tennis court. And they allowed us some games.
Didn't play tennis there. I mean, you had a tennis court, but you didn't actually play tennis.
We played volleyball.
Played volleyball, okay.
Yeah.
Did you hone your skills and 16 months 16 months in there? But at that age, I mean, how old were you in 1982?
35.
What does 16 months in prison do to you in terms of change? Well, it obviously didn't change it didn't weaken your resolve and your commitment to the ideals that you had stood up for. But how does that change you?
Well, prison humiliates you. It dehumanizes you. It makes you feel very vulnerable. It makes you feel that the state is so powerful. Because they fly you to places, they lock you up, and they deny you, basic stuff like books. If you are a professor and you have no pen or books, it's very, very, very depressing. And of course, we got the Quran and the Bible, which was okay, but other than that, you get stuff that's not. It's not good to read when you're in prison. You don't want to read about parties and cocktails when you're in prison.
Yeah, it's not the. Well, I guess it's a way of breaking your spirit as well, which is what I guess they were trying to do. We're going to come right back with Honorable Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. We're going to talk about moving from law to NGOs and other sectors. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Wanjamungai from On the Road.
And I'm Alexandria Majala for Africa Means Business.
As journalists, our aim is to entertain as well as educate. The world is beginning to sit up and take notice as the Ebola strain spreads outside the continent. And true facts about Ebola spread far more easily than the virus itself.
That being said, to be forewarned is to be forearmed, which is why the best way to protect yourself and your family is to separate myth from fact. Myth: Ebola can be spread through water or air.
Fact: Ebola is spread through direct contact of bodily fluids of an infected person, like saliva and breast milk.
Myth: you need expensive hand sanitizers to kill the Ebola virus.
Fact: routine hand washing with soap and water can protect you and your family, and regular household disinfectants like bleach can kill the Ebola virus.
Fact: if we all pull together, we can defeat the Ebola virus.
Fact: Ebola has no cure, but if you are diligent in taking preventive measures, we can get through this.
Take care of yourself and your family, because Africa 24 Media cares.
Hi, welcome back. We're here with Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. Willy, we were talking in the break a little bit about the move from the law side or the legal side of your interest into the world of NGOs. You spent a lot of time with the Ford Foundation.
Yeah, 7 years. Yes.
7 years with the Ford Foundation. Now, it's not, working for an NGO from a very, lucrative legal profession, not something many lawyers would want to go in for. What made you take that step?
My legal profession wasn't lucrative. I did a lot of criminal work. I defended many bank robbers in the 80s, and by 1989 they have all been killed, so I went to school.
So all your clients had been killed?
Yes. Yeah.
Not because of the way you defended them, but
because I always got them off.
Oh, wow. But isn't that lucrative work? I mean, these guys can usually pay some pretty good fees from the money that they robbed.
I just liked doing that kind of work. It was pretty easy in terms of defending bank robbers, because they're always beaten, and they always gave confessions. So you go to court and basically show that the confessions were illegal.
Under duress.
Yeah, under duress, and they got off. So, but it was interesting. I mean, I couldn't choose between two robbers, the bank and the actual people. So
it's getting even harder these days to make that difference now.
Yeah.
But leadership for me is one of the biggest challenges. And you've traveled around the continent, you've traveled across the world. Where do you see, we're having a leadership crisis in inverted commas, even in Kenya here. Yeah. Where do you see the next crop of leaders coming from? Because, 50 years on, we've just celebrated 50 years of independence. Many countries in Africa are doing 50 years. In Kenya, you have, a president that is of the son of the first founding president of this country. You have a leader of the opposition who is the son of the first leader of the opposition in this country. I'm sure many other people see the irony in that. But why don't we have a new crop of people across the continent coming up into politics?
That's an interesting question. I think the first thing is that running for office is very expensive in Africa, right? And I guess that explains, why certain families, certain individuals are being able to capture political power. Is very, 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 very expensive, especially in countries where we don't have issue-oriented politics. We have politics of divisions. People mobilize others on the basis of ethnicity, race, religion, gender, generation. So there are no issue-oriented politics in this country, in Africa, as far as I know. And I think the next generation of leaders will have really to come from people who think through issues, and the people who can capture a following on the basis of the material interests of the citizens. and work very hard to destroy these divisions so that these countries become nations. And once they become nations, then they start looking at the bigger picture. If you take Kenya, for example, our politics should be focusing on domination of the region. And that's a vision that you find with business people, not politicians. So if you ask me, I would basically say that if there were more Uhurus, for example, people who are in business, maybe his, I suspect, is a corporatist vision in terms of markets, in terms of expansion and so forth. And I would think Kenya Commercial Bank, Equity, Manu Chandaria, there are people who trade outside our boundaries, and their vision is very, very different. But I think the main thing is to also focus on the people, because if you focus on profits and not people, it becomes a real problem.
But that's always the dilemma, is having business people in positions of political power. They're also thinking about profit at the expense of the customer in most cases. But also having people come from a business background, having people that are not looking to enrich themselves. We seem to have politicians across the continent that have failed in everything else that they've tried, and then they come into politics because that's all that's left of them for them to do, and it seems to be a problem. How do we get the people that have been really successful in business, that don't need the money, but are looking to actually make a difference? Where can we find those people?
I think there's still this notion that politics is dirty, and people don't want to get into it. But how will it become clean unless those clean people come out and put it right? I mean, in Africa we have Botswana, for example, that has run a very clean politics. In a nation that is corruption free. They use their resources properly, so it's doable.
You've done a lot of your work out of the limelight. Things like the Ford Foundation work were not high-profile things for you personally. You even wrote a column in one of the local Kenyan newspapers here for 7 years under a pen name. Yet you're now one of the most recognized faces in Kenya. How have you handled this change, and how has your family handled this change?
I guess because I'm in social media, I don't feel that big, because I get abused and I get insulted every day. So,
do you handle your own Twitter account, by the way?
Yes.
Do you look after it yourself?
Yes.
So if I send you a tweet, it'll come. The reply will come from you.
Yeah.
But again, going back to the question about being in the limelight, is that you seem like a very private person. For the many years that I've known you, it's not been someone who's out there and likes to be in the public eye. This is, it's a huge shift for you. And what are the?
But in the judiciary, basically the judiciary is very aloof. The judges are, very private people. They hardly. Go out.
But the cases that you look at, the issues that you deal with are very much, you're very prominently in the public eye.
Yes, that's right.
For good or bad. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's for me, it's easy. I never have vested interest in the outcome of any case. So I just apply the law, the evidence and the constitution, and I get the outcome, and that's it. Because if I start worrying about the consequences of a particular decision, it will depress me, it will stress me out.
But obviously you never will please everybody. There's always going to be a losing side and a winning side. How do you deal with the abuse? You just said that you do get a lot of abuse on Twitter. How does that? You're a human being. It must affect you in some way.
No, yeah, it does. But it also depends on how you answer the the questions. In the case of petition, I basically said that Uhuru and Raila fellow Kenyans, they are my brothers, right? So I didn't really care who, became president. So I was just going to work on the constitution, the evidence, and the law, and that's it. I think telling people that you're a Chief Justice of everybody, helps, especially in a country where you can easily be pigeonholed.
Right. And we're going to be right back talking to Honorable Chief Justice Dr. Willy Mutunga. We're going to talk about the future and the scoop with the Chief Justice. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm still here with Honorable Chief Justice Dr. Willy Mutunga. We're talking about the future. What happens after you finish your term, which will be, depending on when the elections are held in Kenya, 2016 or 2017? What's next for you? Maybe politics?
No, I'm going back to teach and write.
No more politics, for sure.
No more politics for me.
That's a passion for you, teaching, writing?
Teaching, writing, sharing my experiences in the public sector. I think that's important. Politics for me would mean an early death, and I'm not...
You're not in a hurry for that.
No, no.
What do you do in your spare time? You have very little spare time. What do you do in that spare time? I read somewhere that you love Indian movies.
Yes.
And so I'm just curious where is this from the time you spent in India?
No, it's from Kitui, where I was born.
Do you understand the language enough that you can...
No.
But I guess with Indian movies you don't really have to understand the language. They were pretty much a set formula.
No, in Kitui, one of my friends, Anwar, translated for me. Half of the movie is music anyway, so you don't need any translation. Yeah.
The huge, very hot topic on social media is, the Chief Justice and the earring, the fashion statement.
It's not fashion, it's a religion.
So tell me a little bit about it. You converted. Speaking of religion, you're a Muslim.
Yeah,
you're Muslim
by conversion.
By
yes.
conversion.
Yes.
What made you? How old were you when you converted?
That was 81. Like all Africans, I was born into Kamba traditional religion. And then at some point, my family and I became Protestants. Then I changed and joined Roman Catholicism, and then Islam, basically because of my marriage.
Your wife was Muslim, and so you had to convert in order to have the nikah performed.
Yeah, but I've had a lot of problems with religion, and that's why I keep on moving. And for me now, I'm a man of all faiths. I go to the synagogue, I go to the temple. It's where I feel I'll get spiritual nourishment, any place of worship. It's
so where does the earring come in? Where does that...
It's religious. My ancestors told me to wear it.
That particular stone, or is it
no,
just the earring?
I guess
itself?
In fact they probably thought I would have a piece of wood.
Okay.
During their time they didn't have earrings.
Because it has caused, you are the most, the most trendy Chief Justice this country's ever had. So it's been a breath of fresh air to do that.
Yeah. But I don't think I'm in the book of what? The Guinness Book of Records. I should be the only Chief Justice who wears an earring.
Wears an earring. Well, we can send this tape to the Guinness Book of Records.
I think we should, yeah.
Other hobbies?
Yoga, for me. I meditate, but mainly read. Yeah, I read.
Anything
a lot.
in particular? You like non-fiction is what I read about you, that you
I
like
don't
to
read
biographies.
I read very little stuff that has to do with law, but politics, economics, literature, anything outside law it's always useful.
If you could do it all again, Willy, what would you change? Maybe the 16 months, in jail?
No, I wouldn't change that actually. I wouldn't I wouldn't change that. I don't think I don't think I would change anything.
No regrets?
Yeah, and that's the religious part actually. I look back and I realize that I've been very lucky. And my vision for this country is a country that has a population that is middle class. almost everybody, because I think being in the middle is very, very, very lucky, especially in a country where you can be in the slums. So if our vision is to get a society that is has individuals, families, and communities that are middle class, that would be a great economy for us.
You see a great future here for your kids to grow up in?
Yes. Yeah.
You'd keep them here and want them to practice whatever they end up studying here in, back in Kenya?
It's a great country. So we just have to keep it great. Yeah.
Willy, the show's called The Scoop. So I usually ask my guests to give me one thing about themselves that preferably nobody else knows.
That I used to be a kamba dancer. Maybe nobody knows about it. I used to play the drums.
Used to being the operative word.
Yeah, I mean, as a young guy, I was in the dancing group and I played the drum.
Do you still practice?
No, not anymore. Not anymore. That was just being young.
And that's The Scoop with Honorable Chief Justice Dr. Willy Mutunga. Thanks for being with us. Join me again next week when I will be talking to yet another great African personality. From me and the entire team of The Scoop here in Nairobi, Kenya, thanks for watching. Willy, thank you so much.
Thank you
very much for your time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.